This is the European edition of Breaking Banks, the world's #1 fintech podcast and radio show. We bring you the European unicorns, startups, founders, regulators, and leaders innovating the rapidly evolving fintech scene today. A truly localized podcast with both English and local language content, with some of the world's most well-known hosts and influencers in the fintech sector globally. Join us every week as we explore what makes the European Union a phenomenal proving ground for many of the fastest growing fintech players in the world today. Okay, let's roll.
Hi, everybody. This is Breaking Banks Europe, and it's our 159th show. Actually, it's the first one in 2023. Actually, I'm personally recording, so very, very exciting. And to all the ones who are listening and watching us, have a great 2023. We wish you all the very best for that. Today, we're going to speak about, we titled the show, actually, Where Does All the Money Go? And we want to find out what additional funding opportunities or cash sources there might be out there for very obvious reasons. Obviously, the whole market environment did change drastically over the last month. And I'm going to speak about this today with Daniel and Kaan. Great, guys, having you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Glad you had a great start into the new year as well. And Daniel, let me start with you, actually. Why on earth are you in this show?
Thanks, Matthias. Happy New Year to everybody. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Most probably it's because I've been working with accelerators and startups, basically business accelerators supporting entrepreneurs. I believe 10 years now in different countries. Right now I'm based in Spain, but I also have been working with the startups in the States, in Silicon Valley. So hopefully I'm going to try to add a little bit of my knowledge and my experience thanks to this.
So this is you told us in the preparation that you are in this environment now for more than 13, 14 years, right? I think you and I think having that actually shows us that this environment, like COVID crisis, like as we experienced this, like a new reassessment of fintech environment and so on and so forth, is not the first crisis you're in, because you obviously already experienced the credit crunch in 2008 and years to follow, right?
Yeah, totally. You mentioned it. You nailed it, indeed. I was looking for a job in 2008 in the States. And it was crazy because in Europe, we didn't have so many problems, but they were starting to face this financial crisis, as you mentioned. So it was very complicated to me to find a job in the States, in Silicon Valley, where I already knew my dream is there. But finally, I managed. And basically, I started to work for a business accelerator that were supporting European startups, mostly from Spain, to go to the Silicon Valley, to find investors and to find a new market to try to sell their product and services in the States.
Okay, cool. We're going to speak about that. We're going to come back to that, actually. Kaan, why are you in this show?
I mean, thanks for inviting me. I'm really glad to be here. And I'm Kaan. I'm founder of Hackquarters. Basically, my company is designing and running innovation programs for companies. That includes a lot of banks and also fintech providers. Actually, today we are rehearsing our Visa Innovation Program Spain Demo Day. So I'm in Madrid. I'm in London generally. So it's quite good to be in Spain, to be honest. So basically, I worked in different industries, but also in tech very much. I'm quite enthusiastic, and I'm an angel investor too. Since 2015, we are helping companies like Visa, HSBC, several other banks, Pfizer, Bayer, Allianz, in different verticals to make sure that they have good startups to do business with. So it is not just investing or giving some kind of support. It is basically letting them grow in European mandates most of the time.
Kaan, that brings me immediately to another topic we already once had in the show, I would say some months or years ago, which is the cultural aspect when an incumbent large organization actually is acquiring a startup, and the culture clashes that are foreseeable actually there, because I would say founders operate on a very different risk pattern than the acquiring company, and sometimes we find that very hard to match, ending up in big crisis potentially, or maybe in a supernova that is creating something very big and new, you know?
True. That is definitely true. Like, this is what I see. And I generally work with corporates, and I teach their employees how to be innovative, like startup at least. So, but the funny thing is they always think about innovation, just imagining like Google offices. So whenever I go to a big incumbent, they always say, look, we have an open office now where we have flowers on the wall. I'm saying that you didn't get it. Like, this is not why Google became this way. It is just because they don't really care. I mean, they didn't really care about those offices. We'll talk about this for sure.
They think it's innovative once you have a table tennis in the office, once there is once you have the bike next to your desk, right?
And, exactly. And if I could add something, we are criticizing now corporations because they are big. They don't in some cases they don't understand these dynamics of the industry, etc. But it also happened to startups. If you remember, a few years ago, even now, all the startups are putting a lot of money in their offices, fancy furniture, also ping pong. Over there, a lot of different things like that, right? So, yeah, I believe there was a problem of how much money in the industry investors were putting, right?
I have to admit, we had a table football in our office, but just because the tenant left it when they moved out, and we just took it over, and everybody, when we had business partners, we said, okay, we do the final price negotiation, we do on the table football. And for every goal you shoot, you get 0.1% on top. And for every goal we shoot, we get 0.1% less for the price. You know? People hated me for that, because you have to know I was 8 years in boarding school, and if there was one thing we played, it was table football. So,
yeah.
So, coming back to our topic, and we mentioned crisis. Do you think we live currently in a kind of crisis, in a reassessment, in a reshape? We live in a very volatile environment currently, obviously. How would you describe the current situation, and what would be the impact for me as a founder or as an entrepreneur? So that would be, let us spend another 10 minutes on that topic. Daniel, allow me to start with you. How would you see the current environment? Is it easy? Is it not? Is it what is your feeling about? What is your sentiment?
Yeah. It's never easy for entrepreneurs. It's super complicated. It's super complicated. Yeah, it's super complicated. And I believe this is one of the things that is a disclaimer for everybody that is thinking about doing some kind of environment, entrepreneurship, etc. venture. It's super complicated, but it's also part of the job, because thanks to the job that we are doing at ISDI Accelerator, we've been seeing startups, thousands of startups. We are selecting them, etc. At the end of the day, you see something special on entrepreneurs is that they are positive people. They look at the future with positivism, and this is very important because this is somehow they can sort out all the problems they are facing and find the solutions. And this is one of the key things that I believe for entrepreneurs they have to take very, very into consideration. Being comprehensive about it, being detailed, being put a lot of effort in the table. So it's super complicated for all of them. It really depends on the environment. So macroeconomics are super important. Also depending on the industries and dynamics of your industries. But I believe that on this kind of environment, startups, innovation, etc., you can always find people with money. You can always find people that are trusting you, etc., to fight for your dream, right? And we can enter into a little bit more into the macroeconomics if you wish, or...
Yeah, no, and we should speak about that, because I would say that what we experience currently in the market is a kind of, as we discussed, that a kind of U-turn, like 2 years ago or 18 months ago. And Kaan, you're going to be next on this question. Be ready. And 18 months ago, you've been thrown money at you, like for just spelling fintech correctly halfway, and today suddenly investors want to see your what is your run rate, how long can you sustain, what is the revenues? In the old days, like 2 years ago, nobody asked you for revenues. You could achieve a valuation of whatever, like $2,000 per customer, not even having 20 quid on your account. So how to handle this? Would you, first of all, Kaan, would you agree on this assessment? And second, how to handle that?
I mean, definitely you are quite on point, because coming from like European background in terms of entrepreneurship, like Silicon Valley was going crazy, but it is not the first time. We know .com bubble, like 99. Of course, like there are great companies still surviving since then, like Amazon, but still American way of doing business is always on growth, because if you can grow enough, fast enough, then you can milk the market. This is how they see the point. And technically, they had a lot of investors with really, really deep pockets. So they can actually support that part. Like most of my friends, I'm sure that, Daniel, you have the same thing. I mean, Uber rides was really cheap. Like I'm sometimes checking my Uber rides in US, in San Francisco. It was like nearly nothing because of all the VC money going through. Now everybody's complaining that Uber is sometimes more expensive than a taxi, because this is the real business. The gas, people are working. So, I mean, that makes more sense now. But on the other side, like European level, people were quite cautious. They didn't really understood the valuations. That what I can understand. Like the business way of doing business here is a little bit different. But also, it was always hard. Like, I mean, if you can raise the money, it is less than the half of the problem, because even if you have the money, it is not the problem, because we always have enough money for every project, but that doesn't really solve it. So I really like it when startups doesn't really die because of indigestion, but when they die because they don't have any clients. So it gives you to more effort to find the real solutions. And the good thing is, like, yes, the world is burning over there and there, like the energy crisis, the wars, the inflation. To be honest, when I was a kid, like really, really small, I was really afraid that they are going to find everything in the world to be innovative. So there was nothing for me to left to do. So that was how, as a child, I was thinking. And then I realized that when you have the change, it never stops. So 2 years ago, yes, anyone with fintech, and if you say that you have AI, you doubled your valuation, to be honest. Now it is really hard, but it doesn't really stop entrepreneurs, which is great. Like we do see a lot of people now, they're focusing on how to make it sustainable, because we've also seen that some of the companies actually cut their valuations significantly through this times. So people are quite cautious. I had a bad experience when we were running a fund. It was a company builder, and when we lost our funding, I needed to fire like 40 people. And that hurt me like personal level. So in my company, I'm trying to make sure that we are sustainable. So if I'm going to hire someone, at least I'm going to keep them like 12 months at least. So I just don't want to do anything stupid for that. But again, like it wasn't that hard than today. It is not going to be easier than today. Entrepreneurship is a kind of a problem-solving thing. And if there's a change, if there's chaos, it's always a lot of opportunities for the right people.
Well, okay, so what I hear out of that is that both of you say, okay, Matthias, why are you so excited about the crisis we are in? And by the way, what would be that crisis be? It's a normal entrepreneur's life, actually, to deal with risk. So nothing changed there. First of all, be optimistic. As an entrepreneur, I would say you have a strong optimism DNA anyhow. But I think it was Mark Twain saying, optimism is just an optimist is a person that is not fully informed, right? Or something like that. I'm sure our listeners have the full quote out there. Third is we have another crisis, or let me say another. People speak of polycrisis, actually, that we are currently in. Sounds much better, by the way. So at least it sounds cool, doesn't it? So we are living in a polycrisis, which means we have, yes, as you mentioned, Kaan, we've had COVID, or we still have it. China reinvents it again currently, obviously. We have the Ukraine energy inflation. We have the interest rate. By the way, interest rate environment, I would say, is strongly relevant to all of us.
Exactly.
Because it's a competition for investment in that sense. So I think that is super, super interesting. We have to have, as an entrepreneur, you have to have an eye on that. And not to forget, we have the shockwaves from the crypto, right? And
True.
And we see the shockwaves from crypto coming over, and my let me call him Sam Wankman Fried, actually, who did cause the FTX disaster, actually pulling and tearing down the full environment. And now investors are mixing it up with an question mark with do investors mix that up with an overall distrust in Bitcoin, or is it a managerial topic that we are facing there? Nevertheless, I would say this is influencing the whole environment very strongly and very, very negatively. Would you agree on this? This is an opinion already. It's not a question. Disagree. Daniel, disagree on this.
I cannot disagree, but probably something that might be of interest for the listeners is to try to realize if the macroeconomics of the crisis that we are facing is affecting your industry or not.
Yes.
Because if you are on, for example, retail, and you are facing the days of COVID, where the economy is totally collapsed, and you cannot even go to the streets, you cannot even go to a retail store, then it's going to completely impact your business. But maybe you are on the e-commerce side. It's the other way around. The COVID was a very good moment for the Amazon of the world, for the e-commerce businesses out there, right? So there are going to be crises all the time. Probably our society, our economy is based on having crises from time to time, right? So probably the most important thing is to try to understand, to realize how it's going to impact the different crises that you are going to live. But in other areas, for example, health sector, thanks also for COVID, is one of the best moments for the health sector too, right? So it's important to try to analyze that. And then, of course, it's going to be a little bit more complicated to have money, to raise funding, etc. But also depending on the industry. So, for example, in Spain, probably 10 to 20 investment funds have just raised investment in the last 2 years. So we already know that all these funds, they need to invest in startups. So they have this by law, by their investors, by the limited partners, they have to invest in startups, right? So at least for the 5 or 10 years from now on, I don't see the investment ecosystem in Spain going to change a lot, because they have to invest that money. Maybe on the next generation, let's say, it's going to be completely different for the limited partners, for the investors of the investors.
But the question's going to be different one like 2 years ago. Like as we said already, the question's going to be like, what is your run rate? What is your earnings? It's maybe less growth oriented. And totally. We also did see, and I personally heard some stories from the market, where people shared with me that actually that commitments have not been fulfilled, that investors step back actually despite having committed additional funding, and so on and so forth. So the whole thing is in an irritation status. Kaan.
I mean, for sure, like investors are thinking twice, but as Daniel says, VC game is quite fixed. So the thing is, if they raise the money, they have 7 to 12 years of horizon to invest that money. But I think they are going to do it wisely because, I like the word that Warren Buffett says, like interest rates are like gravity. So when it's high, it's really tough to jump because, like the money itself is more expensive to get it. Like if you want to get some loans, that you need to pay with a lot of interest. So, and an investor, if you want to return something even better than the interest rates, it is going to get tougher. So most of my investor friends are trying to have less new deals, try to understand what best deals they have, just to make sure that they have the best unit economics as possible, so they can double down on the good going startup. So that's for sure. Like both on the investor side, it is going to be tough. And for the entrepreneurs who are going to try new things, it might be a little bit harder. Like if you still have a good job, but you still have a good idea that you want to follow, it might be a little bit tough for you now just to leave everything and start something new because, there's a lot of things happening in the world. So on both sides of the table, that's definitely a thing. But again, in 2008 crisis, this is when we had most of the good tech companies emerge. So this is a good time for builders. So if you're an entrepreneur, that you need to hire the developer, you need to hire the designer, you need to hire the business person. Like if you need to outsource everything or just to need a huge team to deal with it, I don't think it's a good time for you. But if you have a good founding team, which can actually do most of the things internally, then that's the best time to build something, make it profitable, at least to show it is going to be profitable, but the money is already committed in most of the geographies. As Daniel said, for Spain, it is same for Turkey, Greece. I know most of the VC funds already got their like 100 millions, 150 million euros parked, and they're going to do it.
So, Kaan, what you're saying, and also Daniel, of course, what you're saying is we spoke about the investors and a changed behavior in investing, as you just mentioned, and I fully understand that investors say, listen, despite the risk, despite increasing, or instead of increasing the risk by adding new investments, let me maybe double down on existing ones, right? And make sure that they survive. Maybe even using that as a time to get additional shares at a very favorable valuation, instead of having this, let me say, sometimes astonishing / insane increase of valuation despite lack of substance. What you're also saying is, as an entrepreneur, I need to be more focused on substance / my corporate resilience. I would say that's the keyword, right? Resilience in order to survive. Do not spend like crazy on all and everything like you might have done in the past, but be very cautious and act reasonable. And what you're saying is team. It's about the team. Is the team capable of dealing with a crisis, for instance? Can you pivot your business if it's not working? Can the team survive without my venture cap support, maybe? And what is the track record of crisis of that team? Is that about the formula you're looking at in days like this?
The only thing that I would like to add is generally I use this at the end of my sessions with startups. I see a lot of startups fail, but I don't really see a lot of entrepreneurs fail because this is how we do. We learn, we pivot, we do our thing. So companies that might go bankrupt, you can just say that maybe the price is not good enough to hustle that idea. But entrepreneurs, I've seen so many in our programs as well, doing their second startup, third startup. They are doing amazingly in any condition given. So they know what to do the first.
Excellent. Daniel, anything to add before we enter into the next chapter, so to say?
Something that you have mentioned, that is the importance of the team. Probably team is the most important thing, and the track records or the experience, as Kaan just said, it's a matter of gathering together a bunch of people that are visionaries, hopefully, but also that feels that what they are trying to do is super important for the world, and they believe all together can do something very important. But there are also different types of managerial skills, as so you mentioned it, because probably it's not now the moment of trying to expand, to grow as much as crazy, as much as you can, but it's a matter of trying to be a little bit more robust and thoughtful in your growth strategy. So okay. In some cases, some entrepreneurs are like that, but in some other cases, entrepreneurs can be more visionaries. A lot of effort, a lot of empowerment. So probably those kind of entrepreneurs are gonna have it a little bit more complicated. But for the ones that are more analyst, more cautious, etc., it's gonna be a little bit more easier for them. So yeah, that's something important also to think about your first hirings in your company or the other co-founders that you are considering.
So that means that actually it's also very much related to the industry you're in. As you know, just randomly, like B2C fintech might be currently under pressure and need to prove their KPIs, while Web3 gaming still looks very much promising, right? So now, wrapping up that part of analyzing the current status, and as I always call it, the VUCA world, like the volatile and uncertain, very complex, ambiguous environment, actually, we gonna take a break because we need to breathe out, actually, after all this crisis talk. And stay tuned, actually, because after the break, we're going to speak about what additional sources or alternative sources of funding you might see out there once doing your resilience homework internally, but also have a look to the outside world saying, okay, where can I get some more money if my investors are shy suddenly, or if I can't get the funding for my great idea? And this is what we're going to speak about after the break, so stay with us.
The FTS Group builds innovation ecosystems. We engage incumbents, investors, entrepreneurs, technology partners, and regulators to build trusted and connected fintech tribes around the world. We firmly believe that innovation in financial services will truly improve people's lives. Learn more on ftsgroup.eu.
Welcome back to the 159th episode of Breaking Banks Europe. We're speaking about the current environment in which maybe funding sometimes seems to be a bit difficult, or let me say at least more challenging than in normal days. We analyzed the environment we are currently living in and what we are experiencing currently. So now for the second part of our show, let us dig deeper in the solution of alternative sources of cash, liquidity, funding. I have my experts with me, Daniel and Kaan, and we're going to try to find some ways for you out there and some guidance for you out there, what to look at, how to prepare your company for something like that, and where you should maybe search for those alternative sources. So we have equity funding. I can walk out to my investors and say, you get a stake for the company, you get, we do a capital increase, you get something, you get a part in the company, and you give me cash. First of all, we would have the bank giving me a loan. Now, I would be a wizard actually to make a bank give me a huge loan for my startup. So I would say, let's forget about that option for a second, right? We can come back to this. As we know, banks act like they only give you an umbrella when it's raining. No, they only give you an umbrella when the sun is shining, never when it's raining. So we should forget about that. So what alternative sources of funding or liquidity or cash support can I have out there? Daniel, is there any kind of high-level wrap-up or ideas that you would see?
Yeah. When I talk with some very early stage startups, I always advise them to meet entirely their network. So to go to events, try to be well known in their ecosystem in their industry. So events are interesting for very, very early stage startups. But then as the startup is growing, probably events is something that is not providing more value to you.
And Daniel, I've experienced so many events where I only met other people who also need money, right? So it's rarely the case that I'm the only one who needs money, and I find 100 people saying, "Listen, Matthias, great you show up. I've got my suitcase with me, so here throwing cash at me." So yeah, but of course, make yourself seen is something you need to do. Don't be shy. Go out there and
totally.
And be
also,
right?
The network in 5 years, in 10 years, you never know. So I've been in events with people that in a few years later are one of the analysts of an investment fund, right? So you never know at the very beginning, but it's something that is needed when you are super early. Then some kind of awards, etc. Might give it to you a little bit of money, a little bit of cash, but also some appearances in media, etc. And then, of course, what it's called informal investors. So business accelerators, business angels networks, business schools, crowdfunding platforms. Step by step, they are growing. So it's an interesting source of funding. And then I would say that there is a lot of public money, especially nowadays. There is a lot of public money, especially in Europe. As you know, we now have Horizon Europe, that is 30% bigger than Horizon 2020. Is almost 100 billion euros for research and innovation projects. And you also have to consider that the UK is not part of it any longer. And UK was one of the bigger contributors, but also one of the top beneficiaries. So we are going to divide the 100 billion in less countries, let's say, right? Yeah. So a lot of money also in the European public money.
Yeah, wow. So let us slice that a bit now. The awards thing I like a lot. Actually, with the two banks I had the opportunity to found, we did always go for awards because that was somewhat like cheap advertising for our superior solution, right? It was a recognition. I would say founders out there, don't underestimate that, because it gives, maybe as a founder you sound crazy, but when you receive an award for your crazy idea, it's an acknowledgement, right? It's something like a certificate. You're not that crazy, actually. It might be useful, and so on and so forth. However, I would say we need to differentiate for this kind of paid awards. You know, there are a lot of events in the meantime where you buy a dinner table for the award ceremony, and you get an award, which is
yeah, totally agree. A lot of noise in the industry. Yeah. There are many business accelerators and much more awards and events, etc. So you have to choose carefully the ones that you believe are interested for you.
Yeah. So I would love to focus on what you call the alternative the informal investors, and the public money, right? So, Kaan, where you feel more comfortable, public money or informal investors? Because you need to answer now.
I mean, to be honest, there are so many sources of public money, but I feel like I don't really speak the same language for most of the donors in that area. So whenever we do, because in all of our programs, we have different companies who are benefiting from at least some of them from those kind of sources. But there's always different agencies that you need to hire. They need to write the research paper or any kind of application paper. So I don't really believe that this is quite utilized well for the innovation so far, because that kind of money actually structured years and years ago for research purposes, like academia, people researching on some kind of new materials. Still, they are trying to convert it. To be honest, for me, the best money can come from the client. And I think it also depends what kind of a company you are. So if you are an enterprise B2B company, then ideally you need some kind of recognition, right? This is what you say. So if you are having a solution for, let's say, for the banks, if you have a good bank client, then the others will follow anyway. This is the way to go. If you are a B2C, then it might be really smart to get something like crowdsourcing, because when you are doing some kind of crowdfunding event, even equity or non-equity, because basically what you are not looking for is just getting the money, but getting the support of the people. That's why I loved like Kickstarter very much now. There are few other platforms that you can actually get the support of the clients that you have. Ideally, if you are trying to be as nimble as possible, just try to go to the clients, because depending on your business model, hopefully you need less money. I mean, if something like COVID happens, that's really tough. Like some business models, Daniel gave some examples of like retail companies. If you have a restaurant, it is hard for you. But in London, most of the restaurants actually pivoted. What they did, for example, Pizza Pilgrims, they did a pizza kit that you can do at home. So, I mean, they just had a regular pizza places, but basically, since they had no choice to open up their stores, they created something to, at least for the time being, people can enjoy at home. So I do like the public money, but it is not quite favorable on our side. As Hackquarters, I don't think that we ever take any public money, to be honest, because for accelerators, it is even harder, because either I need to spend more to get the money that I don't need, because they tell me how to spend the money as well. For me, it is always to go with the client side.
Okay, what you say is super interesting, because what you're saying is you do not speak the same, and let us focus on the public part. You do not speak the same language as the investors. I can definitely understand that point very well. If you speak to a bureaucracy, it's a different tone, of course. But nevertheless, do not let us forget about that pot of money, actually, because I think, and Daniel, you indicated this, these are billions year by year, right? Totally. And I understand as an accelerator, I fully understand it. It's a totally different kind of business, but I would say there are many, many pots for technical, innovative people. For even, Germany now most recently announced another pot for video games. We know that German Secretary of Economy, they have state grants for all kinds of energy efficiency, sustainability, and all that stuff. So there are European programs like reaching up to 2.5 million euros you can gain. But yes, the problem is the language. The problem is the application process itself and the duration of the application process, right? I think it takes you up to 18, 24 months, maybe, Daniel.
One of the things that I believe specifically the European Commission is doing very well is that they are hiring experts to try to manage the timings much better. So, for example, there is something that the European Commission invented or started a few years ago that is cascade funding. So basically, they are looking to some experts, investors, business accelerators, etc., to manage, let's say, several million euros, and then to create a consortium. That consortium manage everything, manage the funding to the startups, manage the selection, manage the mentors, etc., and even the investors' relationship, right? So they know, at least at the European Commission side, or even in other states and national grants, etc., they know they are super slow, but they are trying to solve thanks to this kind of different approaches, hiring somebody, a middleman that is supporting them. Indeed, this is what we were doing from the very beginning. 10 years ago, we started with one program in the European Commission. Thanks to that program, we have the track record of supporting 200 startups in 2 years. Wow. Thanks to this, we are becoming one of the accelerators, one of the biggest accelerators in Europe, thanks to this, right? Because right now we are not only managing one program, but several ones, and also not only for public money, but also we are managing the program for Toyota Motor Europe or UNICEF. So thanks to all of this learning, we are also moving to the corporate side, right?
And there are many of those programs in various kinds, like the One Donate Equity.
Yeah,
right?
there are some that are going to require you equity. For example, the European Investors Bank is going to most probably going to request some equity to you, of course. But for example, the EIC, they have a lot of programs. EIC Accelerator, EIC Pathfinder, EIC Transition. And there are many more. So I believe for the entrepreneurs out there, there are some websites in the internet that you can check, where on those websites you can find all the different programs.
And I think it's worth doing this because actually before dying due to cash drain, actually better search for that. So there are many programs, like as you just mentioned, Daniel. Then there are some grant you maybe kind of loan but free of interest rate, right? Others, I would say, are even are also interesting because they support your investors. We have at least, and maybe you have that in Spain as well or in England. They give you a kind of 25% kickback on the investment when you because they identified that company to be worthy to be supported. So if an investor invests 100%, the investor immediately gets a kickback by the state of 20 to 25% of that invested amount. Right.
This is happening in Israel, for example. The public side, the public market, public investors are matching whatever you can have as an entrepreneur coming from private investors. So they are doubling the investment, which is
also or something like that. So on the public side, I would say there are many ways to skin that cat, actually, as you would say in England. So of course, it's a painful application process, right? It's a painful application process, but I would say, in order maybe to describe my business idea in a compelling way, this process can be also very teaching, right? It can be very educational for me, right?
Totally. Yeah, totally agree. Because this is one of the advice that I provide to startups that are considering to apply to our programs, the ones that are public and private. Nowadays, by the way, we are using the same online questionnaire for the public ones and the private ones, because we are trying to make it easy for both of them. But the advice that I provide is you have to have your business plan with you. And then it should be a copy-paste. We are going to ask for your market. We are going to ask for your competition. We are going to ask. So it's a copy-paste.
What are the revenues in Kaan? And by this, I come back to you. Of course, it would be best if my customers pay me, right? But I believe me, it's not always easy to, and I fully understand that. Once, in particular, young startups in the B2B or B2C environment, to start with a very, very low cost offer to their customer base. I think in B2B, we have the golden rule that the first B2B customer you have to pay as an entrepreneur. The second is if you're good, break even already. And the third one, you start earning. Having your customer, in particular in the B2B, paying you, isn't that also creating a strong dependency from that single B2B partner?
I mean, for sure it does. But the reason why I'm asking, like, get your money from client is I see so many entrepreneurs quite shy about asking for money, which actually postpones that to understand that they don't have product market fit, because at the same time they feel that they're not going to pay for it. So I just want to push them so much. So if they need to pivot, they even need to know it that month, not in 6 months. When you have the money coming from somewhere, especially on public sources, that's okay, because generally they pay for the salaries and everything. So they know that they are going to have for 16 more months. So they can deal with that later. But to be honest, if you're an entrepreneur, it's not the same as like a researcher. In research, you need to take your time because this is a totally different approach. But as an entrepreneur, you need to make sure that what you are providing is a value for someone. And in order to understand if it's a value, you need to ask something in return. It can be money, it can be something else, but they need to say, oh, yes, what you are giving me is really great. This is my €1,000 for using your product. But sometimes they know that if they ask for €1,000, they're not going to say yes, and they don't want to hear it just now. So this is the part that I really want to push them. It is not just about like just do it like bootstrap.
Kaan, and I remember a conversation we once had as Fido Solutions. We tried to pitch, or we did pitch our software as a service solution to, let me say, more or less Mid-East bank. And this bank then said, yeah, well, actually, I don't give you really money for that, because when I am your customer, this is like advertising for your solution to all the others, and they will follow. And in the same time, they did ask us about our sustainability. And then I said, listen, if you would pay me, my sustainability would be much better. So would you? They created a catch-22 situation in which I only could lose. No surprise, we ended that conversation, but because it didn't make any sense, right?
Yeah.
So what you're saying, actually, and in the order of time, what you're saying is, of course, get your KPIs, get your business model and KPIs ready to show me not only maybe downloads of apps, but also paying customers, right? And paying customer equals proof of concept, which means I understand your problem statement, but show me whose problem are you solving, and is that person, institution willing to pay for that, right? This is actually, and everything else, just forget about it. And call it research. Fine, I love that. That's about it.
Something that I would like to add here, Matthias, if you believe this is interesting for the listeners, is that in some cases we are seeing ourselves, the managers of the business accelerators, as a middleman that is supporting both sides, the startups and the corporates. Because following the example that you have mentioned, in some cases, some corporates have approached us to provide a business accelerator to them with that kind of approach. And it's our job to let them understand that no, it should be a paid pilot with a startup. It should be something that is startup friendly. It shall be something that is good for your image in the long term, etc. So, and in some cases nowadays, some startups are following us, ISDI Accelerator, because they know us, they know our values. So if we are working with a corporate, or if we are working with some kind of public entity, we are trying to make it possible to have a really win-win-win situation for the three of us.
Before ending up our show, and guys, get ready to give me one final sentence then, as a piece of advice to our listeners. Let me also come back to Kaan's point, actually, regarding crowdfunding. Is that, crowdfunding, as Fido Bank, we supported that from the very beginning as a payment service provider, more or less, and account provider to this. But at the end of the day, sometimes I have the feeling that companies do enter into a crowdfunding process as the kind of last try to get a little bit of money, kind of last hope for it. And the quality of the whole project might be questionable. Let me say it like this. We had a fintech the other day over here in Germany asking for crowdfunding on an impressive valuation, and did not even collect 25% of the estimated or kind of objective money. So that's quite dangerous, isn't it? I would say, and the investors, and you split up your shareholder structure. Maybe this is an obstacle then for future rounds. How do you see this? Just one sentence, and then we wrap it up.
I mean, for the crowdfunding, definitely. The thing is, crowdfunding, by the nature, it's different, because you need to speak to hopefully tens of thousands of people, and they need to believe in your mission. And some companies are not really good in this way. Like, they can provide a good solution, but they're not really after a solution, but they want to support something with a given mission, and they want to be a part of it. So personally, I invested and also supported a lot of projects. Some of them failed. I'm happy with it, because I wanted to be there with them, because what they are trying to do was really significant to me. It was speaking to me. So that was really good. I mean, today, at least, everything is quite easy, like in terms of like processing of any kind of money, even getting it from out of countries. So it is quite incredible. It is quite global to find those kind of followers. That definitely has a different strategy. So you need to prepare it for it. So if you are going to fail, And probably that's one of the reasons. And some companies are not really good for crowdfunding as well, because it's too complicated for people to understand. They don't really relate to the problem that you are trying to solve. So I think this is the biggest problem, but I do believe in crowdfunding, especially what you are solving is relevant to tens of thousands of people.
Okay. So I think we spoke about 10 or 12 different ways of getting funded. I think this is the very positive message. There are many ways, again, to skin that cat, and it's it's if way A maybe is not working, maybe you think about alternative B, C, and D. It's up to the CFO of your startup actually to sort that out. I would say push your CFO and request actually a paper from your CFO saying, listen, what alternative sources of liquidity would be around there and what are the requirements to get into this. Have in mind actually the duration of those processes. I would say venture funding, at least 6 months, state grants, maybe up to 12 or 18 months, and so on. So it's hardly a quick shot. The quickest is make revenues. I would say that's the most straightforward process. But we will not end that show not getting a single sentence and piece of advice by our esteemed guests. So, Daniel, what is the kind of golden rule you would donate now to our audience and that to that topic?
Mm-hmm. Maybe very basic, but I would say that it's very complicated to be an entrepreneur and to have like venture and grow in the venture, but it's possible. And you should believe in yourself and try to have a vision of your company that is very powerful, that is following your values. It's going to be complicated. It's going to be a complicated path. But if you feel powerful, if you feel empowered about the trip that you are doing, most probably you will find the solutions. You will be able to sort it out. But if you choose an industry that you don't like, or if you choose some colleagues with yourself that you don't really like or you don't enjoy, it's going to be painful. So choose wisely what is motivating you and who is motivating you.
Daniel, thank you so much. Kaan?
Let me just go on the investment side, because this is kind of what I feel with the problems with the entrepreneurs. Because when you are, every investor, including like people in crowdfunding, they know that companies need money. I need money. Everybody needs money. So if we have more money, we can do something better with our companies. But when you're asking for the money, just make sure that you are not quite late. Because when I hear people saying that if they don't have my money, the company is going to fail, this is not sexy for any investor. So all of the investors just want to be a part of something great, and they want to feel that if they're not going to put the money today, they might not have the chance to put it tomorrow, because it's going to get bigger and bigger. If you don't let them feel this, probably because this is the case, you still need the money. That's why you need the clients, you need the growth, you need to make those connections way before asking for the money. And this is one of the things that I always talk to my entrepreneurs, like, you just don't ask the sex on the first date. Just go and start dating people. This is how we are trying to do. Like, just go meet with the VCs who might be interested in your product, possibly. Just don't ask for the money yet. Just tell them why you are doing this and what's happening. Just get some feedback. And just after you update few times, they will know that you are here to stay. Like, you are doing something sustainable. You are on your mission. And when you need the money, everything will change then. Probably they will ask you first, if you need money, just let us know. So I think this is the biggest thing for the entrepreneurs to do it.
Thank you so much, Kaan. And actually, gave our meeting a totally different spin at the very, very end. I'm very happy you didn't mention that in the beginning.
I hope we can cut some parts of it.
No, we will not cut that because it's absolutely valuable, guys. Don't be too quick when having the first date. That is something we learned now. Maybe playing hard to get is even the better strategy. And what you both are saying, Daniel and Kaan, is actually believe in yourself, believe in your concept, and everything else will follow, right? And if it's, to be very open and honest, if it's a shit concept, it doesn't deserve to be funded. Let me say it like this, right? With these words, with these brutal words, but maybe saving cash and lifetime. With those brutal words, let me end up. Thank you so much, Daniel and Kaan. It was a very, very fresh and exciting and entertaining show. I hope also to our listeners. That was episode 159. Speaking about resilience and getting funded in the world of crisis. Thank you so much for listening and stay tuned to Breaking Banks Europe. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to Breaking Banks Europe, a Provoke Media podcast in cooperation with FinTech Stage. Don't forget to tweet us out, shout out, or post to the team at Breaking Banks EU on Twitter. If there's something or someone you'd like to hear on our cast, let us know. See you next week on Breaking Banks Europe.